subway that you will find in the movies.
And I do want to give credit to 20th Century Fox, where this was produced. Daryl Zanuck, who ran the studio, was a big fan of Sam Fuller. He loved Zanuck had been a writer, and he really appreciated Sam's kind of smash mouth approach to telling stories, shove everything up in the lead, keep hitting them hard, all this stuff. Zanuck really related to it. And what I love about this film is, of all of Sam's movies, I think this one is where he really utilizes all the departments at Fox coming together under the direction of Lyle Wheeler, who was the guy who art directed the hell out of this movie so that it felt like New York.
Yes, Fuller had himself designed this idea of Skip, the main character played by Richard Widmark, living in this shack in the East River, reached by this sort of rickety gangplank, and he had sort of sketched this out, but he wanted this film to have this kind of gritty neo-realist feeling, and he was very happy with the way that Wheeler and everybody at 20th Century Fox was able to achieve that. But the other thing that makes this such a great, and this is maybe my favorite Sam Fuller movie, who else would have made a movie in 1953 where the protagonist is a pickpocket who basically, saves the free world with the help of a stool pigeon and a tramp? But Fuller loves these truly marginal characters. I mean, these are like the lowest of bottom feeders, the people who are looked down on even by the rest of the underworld. But he loves these people, and they have their own code. Even the stoolie, she kind of has her own professional ethics.
Honor among thieves.
And they don't judge each other because they are all just trying to survive. And you have these three fantastic performances, of which, although Richard Widmark is playing the thief, Thelma Ritter steals every single scene that she is in.
Everybody knows that, I think if you watch Noir Alley, you know that I consider Barbara Stanwyck to be the greatest actress in the history of film. And I'm just going to say that Thelma Ritter is the epitome of a great character actress. She is absolutely the best.
And this is her finest hour. And Fuller, when he loved somebody, and he loved Stanwyck, whom he gave her great swan song in 40 Guns, but he created the greatest role for Thelma Ritter, and especially her, her final scene, about which I won't say anything, but the greatest scene of her career, certainly, and one of the great scenes of movies of this period.
And it's interesting that he did create this character for her specifically, but the character of Candy, played by Jean Peters, was sort of up in the air. He was wondering, talking to Zanuck and saying, who are we going to get to play this part? And it was fascinating because, as Sam would like to retell the story, he interviewed her and thought she was fine, and then she left and walked away, and he watched her walk away, and she was so bow-legged that he said, that's her, I can drive a Jeep between those legs, and she is magnificent in this film.
As is Richard Widmark, also maybe my favorite Widmark performance. And, he of course became this overnight sensation playing Tommy Udo, this cackling psychopath who pushes an old lady in a wheelchair down a flight of stairs. That was his introduction to the movies. And then he really wanted to get away from playing those kind of roles. He played some very sort of upright, heroic roles. But this, to me, is my favorite kind of Widmark role, which is, he's an anti-hero. He's not a good guy. He's not a bad guy. The other thing we wanted to talk about, I know, is so this is a movie where the bad guys are commie spies, but it's a very apolitical movie. Fuller said he wanted to kind of show up the idiocy of the Cold War climate. And he was proud of the fact that J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, hated this movie. There were certain lines that had to be kind of toned down.
In fact, when Fox released the posters for this movie originally, it said across the top in blazon was, how the FBI took a chance on a B-girl and won. And then Hoover saw the movie and hated it so much that he made them take FBI off the posters. So I actually have one of those posters where you have it, it's called a snipe, is pasted over FBI, and it says the law, how the law took a chance on a B-girl.
And I think it was especially the line where Skip says, "Are you waving the flag at me?" that upset Hoover. But so in America, we have that. But meanwhile in France, you have these, left-wing critics who are very upset about the movie and its anti-communist stance. And so, speaking of posters, I know there's also a great French poster.
So when Sam Fuller is revered in France, and when this movie was released there, the socialists and the communists in the government were so offended by it that they actually had the whole film subtitled differently, so that it was all about drug dealing and not about communism. So, and the movie was retitled Port of Drugs in France.
And
we were both talking about how much we want to see that version.
I'm
like, how
very
did they
curious how they did this, but you can see this poster that says Le Port de la Drogue. I think
this movie is absolutely sensational. This is Sam Fuller at his absolute best, and Widmark. And how many folks have not seen Pickup on South Street before? Okay, but see, that's the fewest when I've asked that question. So there's a lot of hardcore Sam Fuller fans, I think, in this audience who know what you're about to get into. This is absolutely sensational. Thank you, Imogene, for coming out and introducing this.
Thank you.
And I will just end by saying that I'm also thrilled because Imogene and I have co-written a book together that will be coming out next March called Noir Around the World, where we explore film noir from this era everywhere but America. So you're in for some surprises. Thank you very much.
Enjoy.